wondered what Weathermen wear below the waist? Game Gear! Comes with 4 games, one size, all the colors, yours for $99.99. And it's unisex! It's good.
Hello and welcome to Replay Retro, where today we're going to take a look at a handheld that almost achieved the impossible by dethroning the mighty Game Boy. I'm Matt, and of course I'm talking about the Sega Game Gear. Way back in 1989, the video game market was a very different place, and market-leader Nintendo's biggest rival Sega were feeling pretty good about themselves. The Mega Drive was already proving to be a big success, ushering in the 16-bit era and leaving Nintendo's 8-bit console in its tracks. Spurred on by this shift in the balance of power, Sega started to work on an ambitious secret project codenamed Mercury. The aim of this project was to take the existing Master System console hardware and shrink it down into a handheld system which could go head-to-head with the Game Boy for control of the portable gaming market. This idea meant that the games library for the system would be impressive right from the get-go, as games could simply be ported across from the Master System to supplement those designed as exclusives for this new handheld console. In the end, what Sega actually achieved was very impressive. They had managed to up the colour palette from that of the Master System without losing very much in terms of screen resolution. And by late 1990, the Game Gear was born. Less than a year later, its worldwide release was complete. Over here, it originally retailed at around £140, before eventually being dropped to $99.99 and boxed in with the puzzle game Columns. The Game Gear was significantly more expensive than Nintendo's handheld. However, the performance difference spoke for itself, and if it didn't, then the series of adverts openly ridiculing and abusing the Game Boy certainly did. This marketing made it clear that the Game Boy was rubbish and had had its day, even going as far as saying that anyone choosing the Nintendo over the Sega must have a very low IQ. It's important to remember that the Game Gear was not the first colour portable, and indeed the Atari Lynx and Lynx 2 were on the market at this time. However, the Game Gear was much smaller than the Lynx, and was also much more comfortable to hold, as well as being notably cheaper. As a result of this, it quickly squeezed Atari into third place, and then out of the market altogether. Just like the Lynx, the Game Gear featured a backlight, so that gamers could play in low light, unlike Game Boy owners who would always need an external light source.
Oh, I can't see anything on here. This is stupid. There is nothing here. Stupid. Ugh. Yeah. Game Gear for the win. I could play all night. No one would know. No one would have any clue that I'm playing Spider-Man on my Game Gear. Not like if I used this and it needed to have the light on. Idiot. There you go, you see. Replay Retro, bringing you conclusive scientific experiments that prove the Game Gear is better. You heard it here first. This is conclusive research in correct test conditions.
However, it's important to realise that Nintendo didn't choose to leave this feature out without good reason. Nor did they choose their simple monochrome display without good cause either. The fact is that Nintendo knew that parents don't want to buy tons of batteries every week, and by leaving out a colour system and backlight, the Game Boy was much more frugal with its power consumption compared to the far hungrier Game Gear and Lynx systems. Nintendo also still had one major advantage over their rivals in the way they dealt with third-party developers. Just as the NES had locked down these outside developers, keeping them away from the Master System, the Game Boy had done precisely the same, leaving the Game Gear with mostly in-house titles and a general perception amongst gamers that it had no great games. However, Sega had no intention of taking this lying down, and quickly released two big-hitting accessories designed to increase what the Game Gear could do. First came the Master Gear, allowing Master System cartridges to be played directly on the handheld system. Next, the TV Tuner, which turned the system into a portable television that you could take with you anywhere. And of course, over the years we also saw the usual screen magnifiers, battery packs, and various other bizarre accessories. To combat the games issue, many of the Mega Drive games which had become popular saw Game Gear releases, including a version of Ecco the Dolphin. Then, in 1993, third parties started getting involved, with Acclaim daring to produce Terminator 2 and a fantastic version of Mortal Kombat. But still, the Game Boy held on tightly to its market dominance, despite these traitor third-party companies. A number of technical faults relating to its capacitors also plagued the Game Gear, resulting in low-volume sound and dim picture quality in many units. But the fact remains that even with all these things stacked against it, the system made a dent in a market which, until that point, had always belonged to Nintendo. Where previous attempts from the likes of NEC, Atari, and several others had failed, Sega had made an impact. The Game Boy was looking weak, and with the vultures starting to circle, it was now time for gamers to move on. So let's take a look at the almost alpha dog of handhelds and see just what it was that made this system so special. Okay, so here we are with the Sega Game Gear. You can gauge the size of it by my hands. I'd say I've got quite average sized hands, so it's not as big as the Lynx that we looked at a while ago, but it is of course bigger than the Game Boy. You can see then on the front face, the first thing you'll notice is of course the screen. Just next to that you have this little LED for power, which comes on red to tell you the system is on. You then also have your D-pad here. It's quite a nice feeling D-pad actually. It's probably the best handheld D-pad that I've felt, although it does have a little bit too much rock on it. But there are no games on the Game Gear that is really going to be heavily affected by that rock, so that's fine. Just under that you have the system speaker. Way over to the other side you have the start button and your two action buttons. Not much really on the bottom apart from what could be some little lanyard hoops maybe there. Nothing on the sides. Apart from on the top of this side here you've got the brightness dial for adjusting obviously the brightness of the system. A lot of times people think they have a broken console when what they actually have is the brightness turned all the way one way or the other. Sounds stupid, but a lot of people do seem to think that that's the reason their console isn't working. And in actual fact, fiddle around with that dial and you might find that your screen comes back to life. Top tip. On the top there you have the power switch. DC jack, so you can run this thing off the mains. I believe just using the standard Master System adapter. I think that's what I've been using it with, although you can also buy a Game Gear power adapter. Don't take my word for the Master System thing and then blow your console up. You also then have the cartridge slot, just here for popping your cartridges, obviously. This input socket here is the communication port for the cable which allows several Game Gears to play together, so you can have multiplayer gaming. Just next to that you have the headphone jack, and just next to that is the volume dial. On the back of your Game Gear you'll find the usual serial number sticker and all that kind of stuff. These two little indents here are apparently for some kind of stand which helped hold the system like that. Don't know really why you'd want that, and I've never had it, and it was only the other day that I even realised that exists. I just thought they were two nice holes. On the top here you'll see this damaged screw hole. That's where the Sega security screw lives, and anyone who has ever fixed a Game Gear before will tell you that that screw is a nightmare to get out, and that's why I haven't put mine back in, and it's also why the socket is damaged. Down here are your two battery bays, where you'll put 6 AA batteries which within 6 hours will meet their death. And I always put the doors back on the wrong way around. There we go. Generally it's a nice comfortable system to hold. I mean, you can see there that my hands are going around that without any difficulty, and I don't have the biggest hands in the world, and I can reach the D-pad and all the buttons nice and comfortably. I can also reach the volume slider while I'm playing, and even the power button, God knows why I'd need to, and the brightness dial. So realistically, everything I need to do while I'm playing this system, I can do comfortably. I'm not having to reach across and do anything. It's perfectly fine. And because obviously the buttons are on the sides rather than underneath, as on the Game Boy, just by holding it, I'm automatically lining it up with my eyes. Rather than positioning it specifically, it just happens to line up with my eyes brilliantly. Playing obviously off the symmetry of the human body, unlike Nintendo. So yeah, that's the Game Gear itself. And this is what the games looked like when you bought them. This is, of course, Star Wars, with a nice big sticker on there, ruining what looks like it could have been some quite cool artwork. These are cardboard boxes. I think these are the only kind of games Sega released in just cardboard boxes. Master System, Mega Drive, Saturn, they were all in plastic. And the Dreamcast were in those god-awful plastic cases. So it's an interesting little fact there. Well, it's not interesting, but it's a fact. Inside that, you find this stuff. The game manual, of course, which is very thick for this game. Jeez. Is that a warranty card? No. Some kind of guff. This is an epilepsy warning. Yes, epilepsy warning. I have epilepsy. Not going to read that. A little cardboard tray there for holding the game. And then within this Game Boy-esque plastic case, if you push that there, flip that out, you will find the actual game cartridge itself, which you simply pop into the back of your Game Gear like that, switch on, and as long as you haven't messed with the brightness control like I clearly have, you will eventually find Star Wars. Yeah! With that in mind, let's take a look at some of the games now. Okay, so here we are with Star Wars. Apologies if you can't see it brilliantly. Obviously I'm filming a handheld with a camera while trying to play it, which is difficult anyway. I'm trying to minimise reflection. So, here we go. You get the usual long time ago in a galaxy far, far away story, and this cool little scene here. The sound is really crisp in this game. This Game Gear has actually just had a new soundboard fitted. So there you go, you can see that here we are Princess Leia with a blaster in a platforming stage. Sure, there's some stormtroopers around here somewhere. The graphics are really good. I mean, in my opinion, they're better than Master System graphics. And they're on a handheld. So, you know, what's not to love? Eek, sorry about that. It's so hard to play through a camera's viewfinder. This game isn't just platforming. There are later stages in which you'll be in the gunnery seat of the Millennium Falcon and things like that, so it is a nice diverse game, it's cool. Get on there, you silly... Oh, I'm gonna go mental. Okay, I'm not going that way anymore, I'm gonna go up here, because that's probably the right way. Yeah, that's how you're supposed to... I can blame the fact that I'm doing this through a camera all I want, but it doesn't change the fact that I am in fact crap at this game. So I thought it would be quite cool if we could see what driving looks like on here. So what better way to do that than with Outrun? I should point out I've never played this version of Outrun before. I used to play Outrun a lot in the arcades, but that was about it. Oh shit. My D-pad appears to be acting up a little bit.
Again, the sound on this game is really good. There's no issues with the graphics. It's all very solid, very smooth. There's no real clunkiness as those trees and stuff move by. Well, no more than you'd expect anyway. Oops. One thing I always loved about Outrun were the crashes. It's clear to see when you look at a game like this, and when you hear a game like this, why Sega was so convinced that this system would destroy the Game Boy. The Game Boy had nothing, I mean, obviously the Game Boy had nothing in colour for a start, and had, but graphically it couldn't even touch on this. This makes the Game Gear, so this makes the Game Boy look like one of those cheap little 99p LCD games that plays one game. That's what this makes the Game Boy look like. I should point out, in case anyone was wondering, this is set to easy, which is why I'm not facing too much competition. The music is absolutely brilliant. If you don't agree, you are clearly mad. Alright, so it wouldn't be right if I didn't show a Sonic game. You've got to love that. Everyone loves a bit of Sega. So this is Sonic 2. Obviously features Tails. Oh, the brightness a bit there might help. Okay. Again, another cool soundtrack. And look at that title screen. That is better than anything the Game Boy could achieve. Brilliant. And with a game as fast as Sonic, I'm pretty sure I'm going to screw up playing it like this. Have I just missed the minecart? No, the minecart isn't there. Oh, I can't see through the viewfinder properly. Just let the minecart go. Did everyone see that? I caught up with the minecart. That takes skills, my friend. I'd actually let it go deliberately, just so I could catch up with it and prove to you all how cool I am. I did that deliberately too. Not that though. That wasn't deliberate. See, when you think about it, the bulk of people who had a portable system at this point were playing monochrome Mario, all the while aware that their home console could do so much better. And here is a handheld pulling off what their home NES or Master System could do. It would seem stupid that anybody would still want to own a Game Boy in light of this. I just don't understand why anyone... This is just so much better. Even with those battery problems and things, it's just a much better system.
Well, while the Game Boy may have held off the attack of Sega, the Game Gear definitely can't be considered a failure in any sense of the word. Its sales were solid, and those who chose it certainly weren't disappointed. It is without a doubt my personal preference over the Game Boy any day. And when it was finally discontinued in 1997, the Game Gear's successor was designed in exactly the same way that it had been, by miniaturizing the technology of the then dying Mega Drive system and creating the Sega Nomad. However, as this system took the same cartridges as the American Genesis console, it never received any exclusive titles of its own, and is not always considered to be a separate system in its own right. The Nomad also never saw a release outside of America, and as a result it's now very expensive to get hold of. That's it for this week's show. But I've just got time left to remind you to follow us on Twitter for the latest news about the show and what's coming up. And of course, I'll be back next week with another 20-minute chunk of retro gaming. So join me again next Sunday on Replay Retro. take a look at a handheld that almost achieved the impossible by dethroning the mighty Game Boy. I'm Matt, and of course I've screwed up this script.